Hi, it's Kristen. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make realistic shadows in Photoshop Elements for your digital scrapbook pages. The object here is to have your shadows look a little bit more realistic, sort of like the old time scrapbooks where it was like the manila looking off-white construction paper that had the cardboard top and bottom with the little string attached at the side, and we would end up clipping newspaper articles and taping those in, and we would sometimes like keep if we went to a concert or something that the tickets stubs, the if we went to a concert, or I mean even the flowers, we'd tape the flowers in, sometimes a photograph, all of these things would be taped into that scrapbook, and you would see dimension. You would see, because they're not flat on the page, they're going to come up. If you like stick a piece of tape on the back of a photo and stick it onto the paper, you're going to have that little bit of a shadow raised. The same thing with any elements, like if you attach you attach the flower to the paper, it's going to stand up, it's going to stick up off of the paper. So that's what we're talking about as far as realistic, to mimic those old-time scrapbooks. And even people today, they're doing the hybrid scrapbooking where they are still using the papers, but it's obviously what you can get at your craft stores are the beautiful background papers and these little foam little knobs and stuff to put under those objects to have them lift off the paper. That's what we're looking at to create with the actual digital scrapbooking. And I'm going to show you how to do that in Photoshop Elements. It is a little bit more intricate because it's a workaround in order to split out shadows in Photoshop Elements, but I'll go ahead and show you that today. The elements and supplies that I'm using are directly from Photoshop Elements, but be sure to use whatever supplies you would like. The photo I got from the web from Pexels.com. It's a free stock photo site, and this one is autumn, fall, with the leaves and the dark, rich, warm colors. And so for that, I've picked in Photoshop Elements, I've picked elements to pick up the colors that are in the photo, like the purples from her jacket, the orange rusty colors from the leaves, the whites from the white highlights here in the photo. And as you can see, we got some texture going with the bendings of the shadows for the ribbon and the feather, and then up here with the shadowing, so it makes the page bend. And this is all that I'm going to be showing you how to do that. Where I got these elements from, if you click here at the bottom taskbar of Photoshop Elements, it's a little tab. It's called Graphics, and if you click on Graphics, you can choose graphics, which are the elements, or you can choose here backgrounds, which are the papers, your frames, and so forth. So just so you can see where I've grabbed these from, like for example, this Brad is the Brad here, and I've saved them as PNG formats alone and put them in a folder so that I could just bring them into Photoshop and I wouldn't have to hunt and peck to locate them while I'm doing this video. So let's go ahead and get started with a new workspace. So the new workspace I'm going to use is a blank file. Go File, Blank File, and the constraints that I'm using is 600 pixel width by 600 pixel height and a 72 resolution with a transparent background. You can use whatever size format you like to work with. Some people like 3600 by 3600 with a 300 resolution, which is a 12 by 12 page, or the 8 by 10 page. Whatever you like to use, be my guest and use that size. So I'll click on OK, and we have our new blank workspace. What I'm going to do now is, just so I have it up, it's a history screen, so that if I make a mistake and I want to back up, I can just go in my history panel and go back a few steps. It's really a great tool, and if you haven't used it before, you might want to start using it. And that's located under the Windows, and you go to History. And this will give you the steps that you're doing, so you could see what's going on. And if you, like I said, if you make a mistake, you can go back a few steps, and I will make sure that I show you that as we go through. I want to go ahead and just, in my photo bin here is where I'm going to be loading the files that I'm using. And as I said before, I put all the graphics here in a folder here in Photoshop Elements. I had saved them individually. So I'm going to just hold down my Control key, and I'm just going to click on all the items that I need. First is going to be this photo that I need, the papers, and all of these elements that I want to use in my page. And I held down the Control as I chose them, and I click on Open, and that will load them all in the photo bin below. So it'll just take a moment while it loads all my files. Now, obviously, I used more than just this flower, and there's this little slider here that will show the rest of them. So, and here it is showing the last element it brought in. So we'll go back to and click on our blank workspace. So we have, now I'm going to bring in the papers, because I'm going to start from the bottom up. I'm going to work with my backgrounds first. So this paper is a big dotty, and as you can see, it also puts the name here in the layer panel. And then I want to add this blue dots paper over it. And what I want to do is I'm going to change the blend mode of that blue dots paper, because it's white. So I want to put a soft light on that. And what that does is it blends this blue dot paper into the big dotty paper. And while I like this, it's lighter than it was. I'm going to duplicate this blue dots paper layer just once more, just by right clicking and duplicate layer, or you can do the shortcut key of holding down the Control on a PC or Command on a Mac and J, and that's your shortcut to duplicate your layer. So now I have the two papers here with soft light. The top one, it's a little bit too bright, so I'm just going to lower the opacity on that to about 81%. So I get a little bit of the orange. I have the white, and like I said before, you can go back in your history panel, and you can see where if you wanted to undo a step. But everything is good, and that's how I did the steps. So there we go. You have the bright orange, and then with the blend mode of soft light, I've adjusted it. So I'm good with that. Grabbing the painted edge, because I want an edge on it. And I'm going to leave the blend mode as normal on this, because I really like this darker edge around it. I really kind of draws you into the center of the page. So I'm good with that. And now I'm going to bring in my frame. Now the frame is quite large, so I'm going to go ahead and just resize with the bounding boxes. As you can see, it gives you a little height and width. I'm going to go ahead and maneuver that a little bit. Click on that. And it put it underneath the painted edge, so just for consistency, I'm just going to drag the frame and move it up. Okay, there we go, back to our photo bin. Now, when you choose this frame from Photoshop Elements, it comes already with the mask and a shadow attached, which is shadowing on the edge only. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a shadow to this. And I'm just it's going to be a default shadow. So I'm going to click on styles, and I'm going to just put a drop shadow here of low. And what that is doing, if you double click on this, go back to the layers, and if you double click on this little FX, it brings you up this little panel, which is your settings for your drop shadow. So here it's set at 5 and 5 distance with a 75% opacity, and it's got a black color for your shadow. I'm going to change that color and get like a brownish color. Okay, and that's, if you look at the hex color, it's 312109. It doesn't matter, it's to your liking. I'm just going to choose a brown instead of a black. And also, just right now it's set at 90. That's, you can, if you want the light coming from this side, then you would use like a 45-degree angle. And again, that's the shadow is coming from the right side to the left. If you wanted the light coming from the left to the right, you would use about 120. But you can also grab this while the window is open, the style setting is open, and you can move this around and you can adjust the shadow to whatever you wish. Now, because this is, we have no way of creating separate shadows in Photoshop Elements, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of move this out a little bit. I'm going to bring my, oops, I'm just going to grab the frame here. Let me get out of this. I'm just going to grab the frame right now, kind of position it up here so that I'll have some room. Go back to the style box, style window box for the shadow, and grab the shadow and bring it out, because I want to be able to separate that shadow, and you have to just bring it all the way, clearing of the original frame. So now I'm going to click OK. And at this point, I need to right click on this and select Simplify Layer. And when you do that, I'm going to have to do it once more because it rasterized it. Now I'm going to have to do it again to simplify it. And now it's creating a PNG. If you look, that little smart icon is gone from that layer. So what I need is to use the marquee rectangle tool, and I'm going to get as close as I can to this shadow without catching the actual frame, and put the marching ants around it. I don't know if you can see that. See the marching ants. And I want to do Layer, New, and Via Cut. When you do Via Cut, it has now put that shadow on a separate layer. So we want that layer to be under the frame, so just slide it right under. In the layer panel, you just want to move it down. So now let's reposition. Just go back to the Move tool. Shortcut is a V. And now go ahead and replace where you want your frame. And now your shadow is on a separate layer. So now we will be able to maneuver it and adjust appropriately with manipulations, which you couldn't do before because you only had your angle and your size and distance before. So now that we separated that, we can play around by doing the, we want to get the distort. So we want to go to Layer and, or let's see, it's Image, I'm sorry, Image, and then Distort. And if you use these bounding boxes, you can pull it out just a little bit. Do the same on the bottom, just push that in just a little. As you can see, you can just play around with that a little bit. I'm not going to do anything else at this point in time, because what I want to do is I want to put a mask between this shadow layer and the frame, because I want to put a square there and fill it so that I can clip my photo to it. So I'm going to have my cursor on the shadow layer. I'm going to click new layer, this new layer icon, create a new layer, and it puts a new layer right in between the shadow and the scrapbook frame element. And now I'm going to use the marquee rectangle tool. Just do a little bit of a square here. Flood fill it, doesn't matter what color. We have brown here, let's use that, it doesn't matter. And now go back to this and select, deselect, or Control D to get rid of the marching ants. Control or Command D. Okay, so now we go back to the photo bin, and now what we want is we want to grab the photo and slide that up. Slide the photo, and now it's much larger than our square, so let's use the bounding boxes and resize. Get it in the position that you want. Maybe we'll see a little bit more boots. Click the check mark, and now we're above this, but it's sticking out from the frame, so we want to clip the photo to the little mask that we made before with the color. So you can do this one of two ways. You can right click with your mouse and create a clipping mask, or you can use the Alt key with your little hand here with the mouse, and then when you drag it right above and get that where it meets the other layer, it'll give you an arrow with a box. Just left click on your mouse button and it will clip the photo to that mask that you made. Okay, so now that we have the photo inside, now we can get a little bit more of dimensional look. We're going to go and add a new layer above the frame layer, because what I want to do now is I want to add that bend to the photo frame, the photo end frame. So I want to create a new layer, and now I want to clip that layer, that new layer we're creating, to the scrapbook frame. So again, it's the Alt key and left clicking with the mouse. It's clipping that blank layer we just made to the frame. And now what I'm going to do is I want to add a transparency of a gradient transparency to this blank layer. So over here in the color box is your foreground and your background color. And to get this back to the default, if you just click D on, or choose D on your keyboard, it changes it to black and white. What we want is black in the foreground and white in the background. If that is not black and white here, if it's white and black, just click X, which will toggle the colors. So, okay, so now we're set at black. We click on the gradient tool. It's right next to the paint bucket is the gradient tool. And if you look down here at the bottom of the toolbar, it shows that it is black to transparent. If you wanted something different, you click on this little down arrow for your transparency picker, and there's a whole bunch here. We just want the black to transparency. And double click, and it'll set it. We want this set to reflected gradient, so it'll look straight across. It's this fourth button in, and we leave the opacity at 100%. We're going to adjust that afterwards. Transparency and dither checked. And now with your cursor, just hold down with your left button on your mouse and draw a line. And just a little bit down from the top of your photo and let go. And that puts a shading, as you can see, on the top portion of your photo, and it kind of makes the photo look bent. Now it's a little bit dark, so I'm going to go ahead and lighten that up. And the way I'm doing that is, first of all, I'm going to change your blend mode on that layer, which is the transparent gradient. I'm going to change that to a linear burn. And now I'm going to adjust the opacity. And I didn't know what opacity I wanted before, which is why I had left it, because you're changing it on the actual blend mode. So, I don't know, 75, 70, I'm just looking at the shade. 66%, that looks pretty good. And it's almost giving the appearance that the photo is bent and it's coming off the paper. And that's what we want. Okay, so now we want to play a little bit more with that shadow, and we're going to select this shadow layer. I just clicked on the icon so you could see. So it's underneath our masking, and it's above the painted edge in our layer panel. So with that, I'm going to use the smudge tool, and that looks like a pointer finger. So we're going to grab that. I have it set as a, the brush is a soft round brush. It doesn't matter what size, because we're going to be adjusting that using our bracket keys. And I want it, right now it's at 60 pixels. By using the bracket key, the right bracket key makes my brush larger. If I use the left bracket key, it makes it smaller. So I want to use the right bracket key. And what I want to do is, right now it's showing right in this section here. It is showing where it's touching the paper. I just want it just a little bit more. So it looks like it's glued down right in the center. And now at the bottom, obviously, we want to bring that out a little bit. So it's giving the illusion that we've attached it, and we've attached it in the middle. Come out just a tad. Okay, and you do a little bit on the other side. Just kind of push that in a little bit. Go back a little bit. That's why I like the history tool, because you can go back and redo. Bend that out a little bit. Bend this down. And if you want to soften it up a little bit, you can even add a Gaussian blur from the filters. So just go back to the mover tool and then select filter, blur, Gaussian blur. If you wanted to blur the shadow just a little bit, you can adjust the shadow. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to cancel out, but I just wanted to show you if you wanted to give it just a little bit more of a blur. I'm good with that. And now I'm going to start adding some elements. So far we've made this look bent here. We've pushed in the sides a little bit, so it looks like this whole center section here is glued to the paper. Now you can even do ends here by adding another gradient transparent, and just do the little corner so it looks like the corner is clipping up or down, and you can even use white to make a highlight so it really looks like the light is hitting it and bending it up. That choice is yours. I'm going to go ahead and grab some more things from the photo bin of my elements. I want to add a feather, and that's quite large, so let's reduce this in size, grabbing the corner box, and I want to move that above. Let's hit OK, and then we want to move that above the gradient. I'm just going to flip this, get to 100. We're good. And I'm going to resize this just a little bit more. Okay. And again, I'm going to be applying the same shadow as I did before. I'm going to go to styles. I'm going to use this low default shadow that comes with Photoshop Elements. Go back to layers, click on the layer button here at the bottom. Right, now we're going to click on the FX again. I don't know, its default is black, so we're going to go ahead and, it doesn't matter, just grab a little brown here towards the bottom, click OK. And now I want to drag this out to separate it, and OK. And again, we're doing that same step as we did before. Simplify the layer, and now it's it's completely by itself. So now we can use the rectangle key, go layer, new, and we want via cut, so it puts the shadow on its own layer. Drag the shadow, place it under the element, and now using the mover tool, go ahead and move that up underneath the element. And now we can go ahead and rotate, custom. It'll allow you, you can do that, or you can just go to the corner and rotate it just a little bit. I'm just eyeballing this. And this is a good indicator because this top one would be further away than this bottom one, because this bottom piece is closer to the paper. And now this is kind of harsh, so the opacity is showing 100. Let's dial that down a little bit so it's a little bit softer. And again, you can also do that with a Gaussian blur. Okay, now I want, before we were adding brads and the ribbon, let's go ahead and add the ribbon now. Go back to the photo bin and grab that. It's very large. I'm going to shorten that up. That seems good. What I want to do is I want to make this about that shade here that I'm picking up from the picture. So I want to add, first of all, move the ribbon out from the, we lost our shadow, so move the ribbon, and now I have to right click and clip that again. So my shadow is back. You should be able to lock that in place as well. If you click the lock here up at the top on that gradient shadow layer, it's locking it. It shouldn't move now. So go back to the ribbon layer, and I want to add up here is the create new fill or adjustment layer. I'm going to click on the new fill, and I'm going to do a solid color. I'm going to grab like a rusty orange red color. Do OK. I'm going to go ahead and right click and create clipping mask, so it clips it right to the ribbon. On the ribbon, I'm going to add a shadow. We're going to do the same style before, and we're going to adjust that out. Change it to brown. Like I said, it doesn't matter, just so it's brown and not stark black. Hit OK. We rasterize it, simplify it. Now we're going to again use the marquee rectangle tool, layer, new, via cut. Okay, move your shadow back underneath the ribbon. We have to reclip the color fill to the ribbon, and now our shadow is loose, so that's good. Now I want to add an edging to this, which is a stroke to the ribbon. I'm just going to click on this again, just using the shadow. I know we already have a shadow on there, but this way I can get the style effect come up. I'm going to turn off the drop shadow and click on the stroke, and want to set it 1, and the color I want is gold, and maybe a little bit lighter than that, so you can see it. That looks good. I like it. And now click OK. But you see, I just applied so I could pull up this window. I just clicked on anything so I could turn off that drop shadow and just add the stroke. So that's why I did that. Okay, so now let's go back to this is the ribbon shadow. And I'm going to bend that, because what we want is this whole center section to look like that's adhered to the framing, and that that the ribbon is bent and coming off the page. And again, the way we did that, we're going to do it again with this smudge tool. Again, I need this smaller, so I'm using the left bracket to make that smaller, and just quickly just touch it a little bit. And now you can just drag on the side with that smudge tool, grab the edge, and now we bent it. See, we bent it. Okay, now we're just going to go above the color fill layer, click on the text tool or the font tool. It's already set for me as Tahoma, and that's the font I want to use. The color I want to use is this golden color again. So we're going to click on the color wheel, and I'm just going to click on this gold color. Okay. And now I'm just going to type in autumn leaves as my title. Click OK. And position that in the center of my tag or my ribbon. Now I'm going to grab the brad from my photo bin and drag that in. It's obviously way too large, so let's go ahead and use the bounding brackets and make it smaller. Hit the check mark, and we want this dragged up because we want it so it looks like it's holding down the ribbon, here, as well as holding down the feather. So that's why I placed the gold brad above. And now we're going to, again, styles, and add that same, click on the same default style. And now we can go back to layers and adjust that. Okay, now let's go ahead and I want to add a little bit of dimension here. I've got, again, I need to bring all of these up above so that it lays on the top. And these are just elements for decorative purposes. I'm just going to add a little bit of a bracket here on the side. And using the same style, I'm just going to click on that. I want this a little bit closer. Again, I want to change this to brown. I don't know how to, I know it's a different color all the time. It's going to be hidden by a lot of different flowers, so it really doesn't, it's okay if it's a different shade of brown. And I just, because that's resting right on top of the frame, there's not that much of a shadow, so that's why I'm leaving it pretty much just underneath the element. It's not far away like the rest of them are. I want to add this little ribbon. So let's go back to the page that we're working on, and we drag up the ribbon from the photo bin, and let's just resize this so it covers And again, I need to move this up above at the top of above the tie. And just resize this so it kind of hovers against the frame. Actually, I'm going to stick that directly underneath the tie. It kind of looks better. Sort of like one of those rubber bands, and you kind of stick things underneath it. And I'm going to use that same style, so I don't have to change anything. I can right click on the FX from the tie and just copy layer style, and just right click on the holes border and paste layer style, and that's another way of using the same exact style without adjusting it. And let's go ahead and add some flowers. Now that we have that, that's underneath and that's the base, and so now we're going to add flowers. So I'm going to grab the red one and drag it up so it'll go up to the top. It's quite large. We need to reduce that by the bounding boxes. Make that a little bit smaller. There we go. I like that. And again, we're going to do that same style. This time I'm going to go ahead and grab another, the silver flower. And we'll go ahead and we'll add a shadow on that as well. That needs to be, because we're layering the flowers, this is going to be added above the red flower. So we'll go ahead and accept that, and then we'll grab the layer and move it up above the rich red flower. Adjust that just a little bit more. Now it already has a slight shadow on it. That's the way the file came. So we'll go ahead and we'll still add the default shadow so we can adjust that. And I'm going to click on the FX. And again, you can separate it as I showed you before. We'll change this over to brown again. Or you can just slide it out a little bit. We're going to go ahead, if the size will make it softer, make that a little bit bigger. Okay, that's going to shift it and move it around. And now I want to add in the purple. I'm going to add some of the purple flowers around here, add one in between, and add one over here. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to grab from the photo bin the purple flower, which I have here. And right now we're going to go ahead and move this in the layer palette directly under the rich red flower. Need to make this smaller, so I'm going to grab it by the bounding box. So now this will be underneath the red rich flower. Let me get a little bit bigger. Just use that bounding box. It'll come up with the curve for the rotation. Make it just a tad smaller. Okay, when you get it the size you want, we'll go ahead and grab that default style again. Change it to brown. Move it around. That looks good. Now you can also separate, as I did before, you can separate the shadow, you can double it up, anything like to make this a little bit thicker. You want this, see the way this is dropped here, it's showing that it's further away from the background. Like here with this shadow, it's showing that it's a small shadow, which is a small distance because it's laying right above the paper with a little bit of peeling back, or raised. But this is showing that it's layering and there's more distance reflected, and that's what you want, so that you get that depth perception. We want to go ahead and just duplicating. You can just right click with your mouse and hit duplicate layer, or you can do Control J, Control on a PC, Mac on a Command on a Mac, and Command J for a Mac to duplicate the layer. Just go ahead and add that in. We'll do another one, duplicate. This time I'm going to move it up above the red, and maybe stick it in there. Again, grab out the shadow and we'll move it out a little bit. Lower the opacity just a little bit. But this way you give some depth perception. We'll go ahead and duplicate that again. This time we'll rotate it, grab one of those corners, rotate it. We want to slide it and put the stem under the flower. So we got some color contrast, and so it shows layering between the red and the white or silver flower. So there we have our clustering going on here. Add whatever else you wish to. Those are the items that I wanted, and now I'm just gonna go ahead and put in my little quote. I already have the quote listed. Actually, I go to File and Open, and let's see, where's my quote? Here's my autumn quote. I'm going to open that. So I have the two layers. I already typed it out, so I'm just going to grab this, and what I'm going to do, this is a shortcut if you wanted to ever duplicate and move it onto your a different workspace, is you right click on the layer, you duplicate layer, and then where it says document, you can just use the drop down and look for your workspace. Mine, I know, is untitled, so I'll just click on that, and what it does is it duplicates this and puts it on the other, it puts it on the document that you want. So that's a really neat way to do duplications. So here on my workspace is my quote. And now I just want to change the color to match. So we'll go and do the text, and we'll change the color. And now it's changed the color, and there you go. So just to recap, what we did was we separated the shadow. I showed you how to do that. After we separated it, I showed you how you could rotate it. I showed you also that you could manipulate a shadow just by having your layer and bringing up your style box. As long as you're on the drop shadow, you can move it around so it'll be exact, so you can manipulate the shadow that way. I've also showed you how you could use a gradient to show the bend, and I've also showed how you could show distance and layering with shadow disbursement at different heights, so that you get that clustering effect. I hope that you picked up some great little tips, like this bend here, so that you can make your pages a little bit more customized with the shadows, that you also learned how to blend papers to make a completely new background. And I hope you enjoy and have fun. Until next time.